Excuse me. There we go. I think we lost some friends.
I think they'll be back.
Do ya? You're an optimist.
I can do it. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Anyone wants to have a question, I'll have a microphone.
Okay, it's your turn.
Hi.
Hi, Laura.
So when I try and do shamatha, concentrating on the breath, and this has happened for many, many years, my breathing gets either too deep or too rapid. I get a little panicky. And I wonder if you have any thoughts around that.
Do you know much about the panic?
This is hard to see on the mic, but I think it's from leftover, like PTSD.
Oh,
I'm assuming.
okay. Huh, yeah. So, so the breathing is just breathing. And PTSD is connected with it, of course, but I don't know if this will work for you, but you know, PTSD has anxiety with it, body memories with it, you know, all of those things. So there's just the breathing. Like, you don't feel anxious about breathing all the time, do you? Okay.
But my attention's not usually on the breathing.
Yeah.
Somehow it's the attention.
Okay, when you put the attention on. So what I'm kind of trying on is some thoughts must be accompanying that effort. Even you don't know what those thoughts are. And you could come off of the breath and just watch the thoughts. Like they, you know, generally it's kind of self-talk that we're kind of not aware of. Like, I can't do this, da-da-da, da-da-da, something like that. And so if those are going on, which you're kind of nodding, something like that goes on. Like, this is hard, I'm panicking. Look right at those thoughts. Like, give me a sample of one. Would it say, I'm panicking, I can't do this? This is too hard. What would one of your chronic thoughts be about the trying to breathe?
I'm not aware of any right now, but I
Okay.
will definitely take that into meditation
Yeah.
and try and be right on it.
Yeah, you want to get aware of the thoughts. You know, we're not trying to suppress thoughts when we meditate. So let them rise and then let them go. So the nature of any thought, like let's say there's a thought, I can't do this because I have PTSD. Let's say that. What's that made up of? I mean, I'm really asking, what's that thought made of? Nothing. Thoughts are words. So you can go, I can't do this. Those are just 4 words. Do they? And then we put the meaning on them. Do you see what I mean? And one time, Lama Zopa was teaching about kind of emptiness dependent arising. And he said, for example, take the letter A, you know, capital A. 3 lines. When you first start, before you learn the alphabet, you see those 3 lines. No meaning. This is what we do with words. We learn to stick all kinds of meaning on them. And then we react. So pretty much a lot of the calm abiding practice, as I understand, is learning to see the true nature of the thing, whatever it is, memory, thought, sensation, and therefore end reactions, end them. So this is the most direct way of Mahamudra type calm abiding, is just seeing these are appearances. Here's the appearance of a thought in my mind. I had about 1,000 during that time. I can't remember any of them. And where are they now? Where are all the thoughts you had this evening? And could you order them and say, I thought this the first second, then I thought that, then I thought... No, because they're just ephemeral. But then we solidify, we react, and the reactions cause the suffering. So that's one way to go with it. The other way is choose something else as your object. It can be sometimes just, I like the corners of these zabutons that are in front of me because they're just far enough away. Like I choose this close corner. I'm not really thinking about it as a zabuton. It's just somewhere to put my eyes. It just stabilizes me to quit moving my eyes around. And then you'll see your mind starts running off to a big story. Bring it back. Corner of the zabuton. So it can be like that. The first Mahamudra text I ever read, because in the Gelugpa we don't do Mahamudra, was Wangchuk Dorje's Eliminating the Darkness of Ignorance. And he said, it's really traditional. Lama Michael says, get a stone, put it down. That's your object. Don't move off of it. Don't think about it being a stone. Don't think brown, round, flat stone. Just keep coming back. It's not easy. But it's not supposed to be, because we're so used to, well, that's boring. I want entertainment. So then we entertain ourselves, right? there was one, what went by? Oh, I so wanted to think about it for a while tonight. Something came up and I thought, I'm going to think about that. Even, even you're sitting up here telling people, no, don't get fastened and blah, blah. And then that one went through and I thought, I really want to think about that. And then I saw myself do that. It was just almost, I wanted to laugh out loud. Like, okay, Zopa, think about it. It's really important. But now I can't even remember what it was. I can't tell you what it was. That's just the, that's the it of it. What's that thing Lama Michael says, that Kala Rinpoche said? Someone said to him something like, in a question, well, all my thoughts feel so solid, like my stories and everything. He said, if your thoughts were solid, this whole room would be filled within one session. Like if they had solidity, there'd be the car and the brother and the last meeting you had, and it's not like that. They're this. Less than air. Wow. We're really distressed because we can start wars over this. Nothing. Isn't it amazing? Because then we can see how suffering does not need to happen. We make it up. We make up suffering because we're just used to it. Wow. Yeah, Linda and then Matthew.
So during meditation, when I'm doing calm abiding, questions arise about my practice that I want to remember to ask the teacher. But I have to let go of those thoughts, and then I can't remember. And I know I've got questions that keep coming up about my practice session, but then I try to let go of it, and then I can't remember to ask the teacher. So,
what's my question, she says.
So, I think I read someplace in one of Alan Wallace's books that he said, if it's really important, just have paper and pen there. Yep. And write it down and then forget about it.
Yep, that's what I was going to suggest.
Okay.
Venerable Chidren at the Abbey had us do that. And you just had you just put down 3-4 words. And now you don't have to look at that. And it's really quite helpful because, like you say, sometimes it only comes when it comes. And then in a discussion, it's not there. So it's quite all right to do that. And or even an insight, I mean, you don't want to sit and journal, but something brief so you can remember. Yeah. I think you're not the only one that suffers from that. And then the mind gets divided. I'll try to remember that, but yeah, but I'm not focusing on anything but my breath. But what was that question? Yeah, how can I do this? Because I know. Yeah. Yeah, Jeff and then Matthew.
Okay. I was thinking when you were answering, what was your name again? Laura's question. Sometimes thoughts aren't words. I have a sense of something, and it's not even an image. It's just like a knowing of something that's. Sometimes they're words, but I find that they're not always words.
What difference would it make with what you're going to do with it? Because it might or it might not. But I'm curious.
No, I think the instructions are still the same. You just let it disappear, but it's not just not a word, and it's not necessarily a concept either. It's just it's something that wasn't what you set your mind to in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So you
as
just
a focus.
let it go by.
You just let it go by.
It can be a sensation. It can be many things. I think I've mentioned before that book, Mind and Mental Factors. Do you remember that hard book? I'm looking at Bob because probably a decade ago we were trying to read that with venerable children. It's a I don't want to make fun of it. It's just difficult, but because there was an effort, and I'm sure it's quite good. I've still never finished the book, to look at every mental factor that humans have, and then divide them into beneficial, not beneficial, neutral. So, like for example, the mental factor of attention is neutral. We put attention on things, right? You move your attention around. Now it's on that window. Now it's on the bell. That's kind of neutral, and it's also called an ever-present mental factor. Some of them are always present. Others come and go, like anger. Comes, goes, not here right now. But attention, it's always there. So this effort, and it was, as I said, it was difficult, but it was also somewhat helpful to look at those. So I wonder why I'm sharing this. I'm wondering if the thing you're experiencing would be one of the mental factors, but we're just not used to naming it, you know. If you wanted to look them up, you could. It's Geshe Rabten, R-A-B-T-E-N, who's the author. This is a paperback, and it's one of the classic ones that they study in the monasteries. You know, the idea is it is quite good to know what kind of things rising in our mind and to name it. Some people can't name frustration, and they have it, and they're running around with it. And as Ken MacLeod says over and over, he says, whatever thoughts and experiences you're having that you don't recognize, other people suffer from. Does that make sense? You know, like you have people who are running around and they're quite angry, but if you say to them, wow, you seem really angry. I'm not angry. I don't know why you're accusing me of that. And I'm just using anger because it's so obvious. But, you know, you could say to someone, you're really caught up in that addiction. I'm not caught up in an addiction. And so whatever we don't see, notice, and manage in ourselves spills out to others, because that's the nature of interdependence. What we think, see, do, and don't think, don't see, and don't do affects everyone around us. So that's why it's so important to get to know, you know, like I think your brave question, get to know what's in your mind, you know, face up to it very gently but precisely and persistently. Like, I see myself do that over and over. What is that? You know, look at it. It's always good to ask that question. What is this? What is this? Keep asking that till you get clear about what it is. Don't settle for just a quick, facile answer. You know, really keep going at it. What is this thing? Matthew?
I just wanted to kind of offer up my experience with, I guess you could call it complications in calm abiding.
Uh-huh.
And I just wanted to speak to Laura for a few moments. I have yet to succeed at holding any object other than my own. Well, I should say that the only object that I have found works for me in calm abiding is the stream of thoughts, experiences, sensations, the flow of experience, because even simply it's even attempting to hold to the breath as an object, even just doing that, it becomes so easy for the circuits to just kind of throw a blanket over me.
What's that blanket like?
It's
sleepiness
like
or
it's
foggy?
Either it's able to sneak up on me from behind and kind of catch me unawares, or it's basically if I'm holding any object other than my experience in my mind, my mind is able to spellbind me, enchant me. Like I have really, really vivid visual experiences when I'm meditating, eyes closed and often eyes open as well, because the attraction that I feel towards the display that I'm experiencing, whatever it is I'm experiencing, is so spellbinding and enchanting, and it draws me in so easily that if I'm watching anything else other than that stuff, they get me. They sneak up on me. They catch me unawares. They pull me in, and I no longer experience a distinction between those experiences and the awareness. I am the thoughts. The thoughts are me in terms of like my experience.
Oh, when you say they, you mean your thoughts.
Yes.
And
yes.
then you're lost in planning,
memories,
future.
Dreams, totally made up narratives that have nothing to do with my life at all.
But you're kind of lost in it.
Yeah, I forget that I'm here. I forget that I'm meditating. I forget that I'm me temporarily sometimes.
Okay. But then you're saying when you do the open kind of calm abiding with no object.
Where it's like, well, my object is I'm going to watch this stuff and maintain awareness of it, distinct from the awareness. Yeah. That's the only way I've managed to make to work with.
Your awareness.
Yes.
We're never distinct from our awareness.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Be lost from it.
The thoughts as distinct from awareness.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not able to.
Are you saying you can stay in your awareness more and watch those thoughts, fantasies, without jumping into them?
But if I'm
being swept away.
But if I'm so much as focusing on the breath in a kind of like intentional way, all that stuff sneaks up on me. Unless I'm watching that stuff and only that stuff. Yeah. Seeing
it as just ephemeral experience.
Yep. If I'm not keeping that space, it just immediately closes that ground and grabs at me.
And everybody's going to be different about these things. That's why there's more than one method taught. But I would encourage you to try like 3 breaths or something, just to bring, to bring it down and then launch into that. Yeah. Because it's so easy, at least I find, when I'm doing that more broad, no particular object other than the experience, either sensations, thoughts, to fool ourselves that we're actually meditating when we're really just doing the same old thing of following one and then going, and then follow another one, and maybe not really cultivating the concentration.
I see.
It is to cultivate concentration. So I guess there's some kind of dance between that concentration and broader awareness.
I guess what I'm trying to say is like objects can quickly turn into the very distractions that prevent me from catching all the thoughts, kind of like tricking me into thinking that like they are something I should like be intimately involved in. Yeah. And I just wanted to kind of offer sort of like don't feel like you're failing just because you're not able to maintain the breath as an object or maintain any really consistent object, because all I'm able to do is just watch what's going on and try to keep as much space in between me and what's going on as I can. That's success for me in
and
calm
I
biking.
think you would say, I'm checking about this with you, that you've calmed down a lot in the last few years.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah.
The only
Something you're doing is working quite well.
Yeah, I think for the first year, all I was doing was spacing out. All I was doing was relaxing in the sense of like, no tension, but also no concentration, no focus, no nothing.
And what I noticed was you're moving around a lot less. Not that that's required.
I used to be very fidgety.
But a lot less, a ton less. Your body's much more relaxed. So, everybody's going to come at this differently, and just seeing your process. And then always Lama Michael says, always the success is, I'm lost, come back. The minute we see, I'm lost in that story, I'm lost in the memory, I'm lost in this and that. As soon as you see that, you're not lost. Lost means you don't even see. You're wandering.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know you're wandering. The minute it's like, oh, now you're not. And that needs to be counted as success. I think, we're not very realistic. I was so unrealistic when I started shamatha.
Yeah.
It's just, we want great insights immediately, but we can't even go 3 minutes without being lost. So the great insight is, I'm lost. Oh, now I'm not. Now I am. Now I'm not. Yep, that's it. We just keep going. And it's so tricky because I can't remember who I was talking with, but about the practice versus the fruit. And we all want to go for the fruit. But how much do we practice? We can't get fruit. It is like a fruit orchard. If we don't do the work and grow and fertilize and trim and pick and all that, not going to be any. So that's why all the masters just say, practice, practice, practice. There's no bad sessions, no good sessions, just a session. Do a session. Good enough.
Thank you.
Do you have no microphone? Oh, okay, it's coming. It's coming. That's the one being passed around. We could do this one too.
I had a question actually from yesterday. As you shared the 7 points of mind training from Atisha, one of the points was don't be swayed by outer communications. So exactly, my sense is I know what that is, but can you expand on it? And there's so much external communication, like everywhere, about everything. How do I not be swayed by it?
Yeah. Well, if I...
Twitter, or the news, or...
yeah, if I call you a name, for you, that's an external... I'm external to you.
Right.
And do you have to be swayed by that? Do you have to be?
No.
Okay, that's what it is. It's an invitation to free ourselves from reactivity.
Right.
So much of Buddhism is about reactivity equals suffering.
Right.
And what was I wish I had the quote from this morning. It was something Kim MacLeod said. I didn't bring it with me. But it's that the freedom from reactivity is the freedom. Right. Someone can walk up and slap your face. And, what did Jesus do? slap the other side. You know, how
Yeah.
many of us can do that? Someone slaps our face and just turn the other side. But, or here's a great story. You know, it's the old one about the samurai and the monk, about no reactivity. So the samurai is roaming the countryside and killing anyone he's upset with. And this monk is sitting there meditating. The samurai comes by and looks at the monk and says, "You're a monk, right?" The monk says, "Yeah." And the samurai says, "Well, okay, teach me about heaven and hell."
Oh, yeah.
And the monk looks at him and says, "You're so stupid. I wouldn't teach you anything." And the samurai pulls out his sword to kill him. And the monk says, "That's hell." He stops him and says, "That's hell." And the samurai is awakened and kneels down to someone who can be so brave and so compassionate to take that risk. And he bows, and the monk says, "That's heaven." But see, the monk is not reacting to anything out there.
Right.
Oh my God, here's a samurai, he might kill me. You know, he's not. He's totally steady in his compassionate wish to end the suffering of every being. So here comes a being. Only thing he's about is end the suffering of that being if I can do it.
Right, and I can see that there are some times when I actually do that quite spontaneously and easily,
Yeah,
and other times where my ego scores a touchdown, as Venerable would say.
of course,
It's like, roar.
of course. And that's where we get to work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Good.
No, it's a great question. Those 7 points are powerful. You know, it comes back to this thing about Buddhists are insiders. You know, they call Buddhists insiders, meaning we're always working in here. It doesn't mean we don't do things in the world, but from effective work in here in our hearts, then we are effective in the world. You know, the West, it's really difficult because we're taught to do instead of be. And then we do, and we make a lot more confusion and a lot more suffering. Yeah, Zopa. He's the other Zopa. There's several Zopas.
There's several now.
We just got 2 new Zopas
That's
during our refuge ceremony.
Yeah.
So,
I thought I'd share another Zen story, kind of like that one, involving
please.
a brigand
I love
and
those stories.
a monk. The abbot. Apparently, the story goes that a whole horde of brigands were coming down the hillside, and all the monks were running hither and there, and these guys were just, taking them out. And they came into the zendo and found the abbot meditating, and the head brigand comes up to him with a sword. "Don't you realize I'm the kind of man who can run you through with my sword without blinking an eye?" And the abbot says, "Don't you know I'm the kind of man who can be run through by your sword without blinking an eye?" So
Yeah, as you got closer to it, I remembered that story. And that's the standard, right? I mean, these stories are important because they really are showing us what a person could get to. How a mind could be like, let's take that situation. I'm so unattached to my body, you could run me through, because that's not the important part to me. The important part is my consciousness that's going to go forward, and I want it to be full of compassion, I mean, there's also that beautiful story of the true story. That one might be true too, but the true story of whenever Tibetans were across the Himalayas and came into India. Still, the Dalai Lama, I think it's once a week, he receives Tibetan refugees and just talks with them about, like, how's it been and all that. Well, he had a monk in there who had been imprisoned for 20 years with the Chinese communists and tortured terribly badly. And the Dalai Lama asked him, what was the hardest thing for you while you were undergoing torture? And he said, I cannot believe this. The monk said, the hardest thing was that I thought I might lose my compassion for the people torturing me. Oh my God. Even to have the thought all the way through even one torture session, my job is to keep compassion for this being.
That's the thing he's scared of.
Huh?
That's the thing
He was afraid he'd lose his compassion and get angry. Wow. They say the Dalai Lama was just in tears in the face of something so pure, you know. And this is, I mean, there's story after story of these models of beings who evidently got to this point. Well, Shariputra, you know Shariputra. I'm kind of on to telling stories suddenly, but I love stories. They really are inspiring. So Shariputra, you know, one of the closest disciples to the Buddha, Shariputra and Ananda. Shariputra, working to practice the Mahayana path, a demon showed up to test him and said, You're on the Bodhisattva path, right? And Shariputra said, yes. And he said, so you want to end my suffering, right? This is the demon talking. And Shariputra says, yes, even demons. And he said, okay, I need your right hand. I'm hungry. I need to eat your right hand. And bodhisattvas are supposed to be ready to even chop off flesh and stuff. So Shariputra cut it off, handed it to the demon, and the demon said, I'm not taking that. You're handing it with your dirty left hand. Because, you know, in Asia, you use the left to wipe the bottom. So you never use it for food. And they say, that's when Shariputra said, this Mahayana stuff's too tough. I'm going for the initial level path to, you know, get myself out. And the Hinayana path. Now, I don't know about that last part, but it's pretty amazing, you know. I mean, there's also, I think it was Atisha who cut off his flesh to get the maggots out.
Oh, I was thinking of the one with the homeless man who asked him for one of his arms.
And he gave him his arm.
Mm-hmm. With his left hand, though.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking too of the one where the dog has maggots, and he doesn't want to harm the maggots or the dog, so he leans down to lick the maggots out with his tongue to get the maggots out of the dog but not kill them. And when he does that, Chenrezig shows up, who he's been looking for all of his life. I think it was Atisha. And Chenrezig appears, and Atisha, or whoever it was, says, where have you been? I was up in that cave, like, meditating, visualizing, and you never showed. And he said, I was around, but now you have demonstrated your compassion. Now you are me. So, of course, you can see me. But, you know, sometimes you think about these and you go, yeah, I don't know I'm ever going to do that. But the point is not to lick maggots. The point is to have such regard for every kind of life that you wouldn't harm. You know, you'd help everything around the situation, the dog, the maggots, etc. Huh?
Tweezers would suffice.
Tweezers, yeah. I don't think they had them, but these stories are to encourage us and inspire us. So don't use them to go, oh my God, I'm never going to make it, because it's just mind. It's just mind, you know. To a bodhisattva, as I was saying this morning, really difficult situations become harder and harder to find because you don't see things as difficult. So they say, there's 10 levels for bodhisattvas, and each level you gain all of these powers. And then they say from 8th, 9th, and 10th, right? The 10th is right before full Buddhahood. It's really hard to find a situation in which you can make that final leap because you're so darn pure, really. And so they sometimes walk around putting themselves in really bad situations, like the stories of lepers, hanging around leper colonies. But I think we've got bodhisattvas all around us, people who go to war zones, and, the Doctors Without Borders go into these countries and take care of people under these incredible circumstances. Now, we can't judge which of those, like a doctor could go to help with Ebola because they have sort of disregard for their own health, like disregards. Like, I don't care if I die. Not motivated by such compassion, but more like nihilism almost. It's all so screwed up, I'll just go do this. So we can never know people's motivation, and that's the most important part. So in other words, the same activity could be full bodhisattva activity, or it could be just adding suffering. And that's why they say be very careful about running around and judging people, because you might be judging a bodhisattva. The famous story of the Buddha in one of his earlier lives killing a murderer, killing a would-be murderer. But when he did it with full compassion for that person. He didn't want that person to have the negative karma of murdering. And he wanted to save the people that person was planning to kill. And he took on the karma. So there's no real karma-free way to do this. He was like, okay, I'll go to the hell room for... If he was that high of a level, he could have probably known, I'll be there for, a couple eons. But I'm going to save this guy. He's my kind, dear mother. Now that I know in his mind he's planning to murder, I don't want him to go through that. Now, of course, the tricky thing is, he was so pure then, I don't know what kind of karma he would actually take on. Because it's a pure act of compassion, which is going to ripen later for sure. But the willingness to take the suffering for that being, it's kind of like hyper Tonglen. In Tonglen we work on doing that. But this was like, I will actually take it. Kind of like someone jumping on a grenade, in that moment. If they have full bodhicitta and they jump on a grenade to save someone's life, wow. Dying with that much compassion in your mind, it must propel you somewhere good. It just must. That sacrifice of the self. But again, we don't know what the motivation was. If it's kind of suicidal, my life doesn't matter anyway, or nihilistic, that's going to color it. We never know. All we have to do is keep our own motivation clear, so we don't have to worry about others. Okay, I think we are at dedication time. Thank you for your good questions and your practice.
Bye. this virtue, may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you. See you soon.